Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Hope you're good and you've had a nice couple of weeks. Mine have been fun and quite heavily movie-based, which is very unusual for me, but it's just the way it's kind of worked out. A couple of weekends ago now, my girlfriend and I were trying to work out what to do. We didn't fancy going too far away from home, didn't really fancy going into London for a change, thought we'd have a weekend off that. So we were scouring what film releases were out that weekend. One of them was Heretic, which is the latest Hugh Grant film. I'd seen him on the Graham Norton show talking about the film, and it seemed quite interesting the way it was phrased on there, and I am a big Hugh Grant fan. For many years, my favourite film was Four Weddings and a Funeral, and I always think he's very watchable and normally very likeable in everything he is in. He's one of those actors who can play many different varying roles very well, but you still get a fair amount of Hugh Grant in everything he does, which I like. That is kind of what I want. I probably should caveat this decision with saying I'm not really a fan of horrors or psychological thrillers. Not really the thing I would normally choose to watch. My girlfriend really did want to see this film. As I said, I like Hugh Grant. I'd seen him talk about it on the TV. They played a few short clips of the film and I thought, that looks okay, looks quite interesting, sure it'll be good. So we headed off to the local cinema to catch an early Saturday evening showing of it. We did not take any snacks into the cinema screening because we had dinner booked straight after and I didn't want to spoil my appetite because I always do like to have all three courses whenever I go out for a meal. I did enjoy the film. It did make me jump a few times, possibly left me slightly more traumatized than I thought it would. Hugh Grant was fantastic, as were the rest of the cast, but it is a very dark film. And from the bits of it I'd seen briefly before I agreed to go and see it, I knew it was dark. I knew it was a bit of a different role for Hugh Grant and he was a bit nastier, a bit more evil than he is or has been in some of the other roles he played. But I will be honest, I wasn't quite prepared for how dark it got. There were a couple of times I had to look away from the screen. I am very squeamish. I must admit, I can't even watch TV dramas like Casualty, for example, without turning away every time there's any blood, gore or an operation. Even though, of course, I know it's not real, I still can't bring myself to watch it. So I had to look away quite a bit. It was very cleverly done. There were points where I thought it could have been not quite as traumatic for me as it turned out. I thought it was going to be a bit more gentler, but there's lots of good points made in it. There's quite a bit of comedy and strangely funny moments in it, which is quite odd for such a very serious film. It is worth seeing. I would recommend it if in particular you do like a little bit of mild horror. I'm a bit wimpish. It wasn't that horrific, but it was probably a bit too much for me, and parts of it did leave me a little bit perturbed. But again, you've got to bear in mind I do not like anything horror related at all as a general rule, but I am actually glad I went to see it. We did go for dinner at a restaurant next door to the cinema afterwards, and I managed to eat all three courses without any issues. It didn't affect me psychologically that much. Last weekend, I ended up going out for a slightly different cinema experience. A friend of mine got in touch on the Friday. He had a couple of tickets to go to the Everyman Theatre in Belsize Park in London, but unfortunately at the last minute he couldn't make it, so he offered them to me and Linda. After a quick conversation, I was a little unsure, she was very keen straight away. We decided to take him up on the offer and took the tickets off him. I had never been to an Everyman Theatre before. I kind of knew what they offered and I did go straight onto the website to check it out. We have gone to fairly regularly a cinema called the Rex in Berkhamsted, which is a very retro cinema where you sit at tables and there's a bar at the back. The Everyman Theatre is similar but different. We headed out that way, and of course, us being us, we did have dinner beforehand at a restaurant just across the road. The film that my mate had booked to see, that therefore we were going to see, was Gladiator 2. Now, somehow, I never actually have watched the original film with Russell Crowe, which is odd because I am quite interested in Roman history, always have been. I did history at GCSE as a child and always thoroughly enjoyed it, but somehow that film passed me by. But that's more to do with the fact I am terrible and have been so bad for years at watching many films that I probably should. I was a little bit concerned that not seeing the first one might be a bit of an obstacle for watching this one, but as it turned out, any small throwbacks to the first one that I couldn't work out, Linda could very quickly point me in the right direction, and it did ultimately make sense as the plot of the latest saga developed. A few years ago, I went to Rome and I absolutely loved it as a city. Obviously, while I was there, I went to the Colosseum, which is just amazing. Obviously now it's a little bit different than it was in the heyday of Rome. Therefore, for the film, they recreated one and not filmed at the original, as sadly it wouldn't look quite as impressive anymore. But I had a guided tour around the actual Colosseum and found it fascinating. Part of the tour was taken by an Australian guy who calls himself the Gladiator Guide on social media, and he's really good. He's done quite a bit of work with various history channels in their documentary making about the Romans, and on his Instagram he has taken quite a few high profile clients on tours around Rome. It's fair to say he was great, and I still follow him on social media. He was an extra in the first Gladiator film, and also I believe he was involved in the production of this one in some way as well. We got to the Everyman Theatre about half an hour before the film was due to start. There was a bar there, so we wandered up to it. At this point, still not really sure exactly what we were supposed to do, but they took our drink order, checked our tickets, and told us they'd deliver the drinks to our seats, which sounded good to me. The screen wasn't actually open at that point, so we had to wait a bit. They opened it up about 5 or 10 minutes before the film was scheduled to start, but it does start with 20 minutes of adverts and trailers for other films, just like any other cinema screening, really. The other feature of this cinema is you actually book a 2-seater sofa. So Linda and I had a sofa to ourselves, which does make it weirdly cozy. It was a very friendly atmosphere. There's a little table each side of your sofa where you can put your drinks. They do serve alcohol, so I ordered a couple of glasses of red wine, which I thought seemed very apt to watch a film about the gladiators based in Rome. It all kind of made sense, although I will admit there was no Italian wine on the menu, so I had a glass of Spanish and a glass of French. If you think about it, the Romans were pretty much all over Europe anyway, so I think it still counts. I quite liked the fact that we were sitting on a sofa to watch the film. It kind of made it feel a bit like you were sitting at home, but obviously you had a massive screen in front of you and all the benefits of the surround sound. They do, up to a point, still deliver food to your tables and drinks as well. You can order on an app using the QR code, but they put a cut-off point on it, so only up to a certain amount into the film will they bring drinks in. Obviously, as it goes on, they don't want to keep interrupting people all the way through the film, which I think is fair and think works well. Therefore, we very sensibly stocked up a little bit to make sure we had enough drink on our table to ease us through the 2.5-hour film. It is an epic film, a massive production, one of those where there's thousands of extras. The sets are amazing. I thought the main cast were fantastic. It's quite a stellar cast, and you randomly spot people you're not really expecting. I didn't look at the full cast list before I went, so I was quite surprised to see, for example, Derek Jacobi, Matt Lucas, and a few others appearing. I was aware that Denzel Washington was was in it because my girlfriend is a massive Denzel fan, and I think that was one of the reasons that she really wanted to go and see it. I thought Paul Mescal was fantastic in the leading role, did that really well. It was really good how they did the big war and fight scenes. It looked amazing. The actual events in the Colosseum looked so spectacular. I worked out the connection and story arc from the first film quite quickly, and it all made sense. It was a bit too gory for me once again in places, so I did have to look away from the screen a few times when there were various things happening. I know it was very brutal and fairly true to life, the way they used to kill and slaughter each other, but even though it's pretend for the film and the movies, I still couldn't watch those things happening close up. I think every time I did look away, I could just see Linda giggling at me, but it didn't spoil my enjoyment of the film, but I was happy with my choices I made to watch it. One of the best reviews I can give it is, I have not got the world's greatest attention span. It is, as I said, a 2.5 hour film. It kept my attention all the way through. Couldn't take my eyes off it. Thought it was very good, very well done. Thoroughly enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the first one, you should go and see it. If, like me, you had no idea about the first one and didn't see it, you should just go and see it anyway. It is a huge, big cinematic set piece and well worth a look. I have some family in Sydney, Australia, and 4 years ago I was lucky enough to take a trip over there to see them and do some travelling around the country too. They were from Sydney, so I based most of my stay there and stayed at their house. I did also go down to the Gold Coast for 3 nights. I'll come back to that in a bit. I also popped up to Melbourne for a couple of nights. Somebody I used to work with at Wembley Stadium was living and working in Melbourne at that time in the tourist industry, and they very generously gave up their time to meet me, give me a walking tour of the place, take me out for a few drinks, and also take me on the MCC tour. That is a magnificent stadium, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing that. They looked after me spectacularly well in the short space of time I was there. They were actually heading back to England full time about 2 weeks after I left Australia from my short trip out there. They came back, and then of course COVID happened. I've been meaning to catch up with them and buy them some drinks as a thank you for 4 years, and we finally got round to it, which was great. We met up after work, had a really nice evening, just having a chat, having a good catch up, talking about our time in Australia and our time working together at Wembley Stadium. It's so annoying though when you think you leave these things so long to catch up with people. We're all very busy, but we need to, I think, if we can, find time at least once a year to grab a couple of drinks with everybody you know. It will make you much happier, and it's a good excuse to go out and be sociable as well. So it was great to see him. We are not going to leave it so long before we catch up again. Already plans in place to meet up for dinner in the new year. I mentioned my trip to Australia and the fact I went to the Gold Coast as part of my time over there. The sole reason for that was I am a big fan of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So if I was flying all that way to Australia, I decided I had to stay, at least for a few nights, at the hotel where the celebrities used to go when they were kicked out of the jungle. I managed to find out by researching online what the name of the hotel was and exactly where it was, and I got 3 nights booked there in one of their rooms. I was beyond giddy. I was taking photos of absolutely everything, pretending that I was one of the campmates that had just been kicked out. I knew the place, I thought, very well before even going there, because I remember seeing all the shots of them coming back there, coming into the big reception and getting a round of applause there, and walking into the rooms, all of which had their own hot tub bath in them, which I very much did take advantage of. Lazing around the pool, going to the bars there, I did it all, sampled the restaurant, had a great time there. I was hoping I might spot one of the staff who I'd recognise from the TV show. It's great that they are now back in Australia, but sadly, unless things had changed, when they went back there for the first time, they were using different hotels, so I could no longer see where I stayed on the TV TV. I'm hoping they might return to where I was this year, but I think they probably moved on from that. Talking about this year's programme, I think they have got a fantastic group of jungle mates this year. Really exciting to see how they bond together. Already really enjoyed watching the show. I just think it's such a great vehicle for Ant and Dec. It gives them perfect chance to use their comic talents, write some great jokes, and just basically have a laugh at the campmates' expense for a whole 3 weeks. I already have a favourite, and he is the person who I thought would be my favourite. Danny Jones from McFly. He, I think, is embracing it absolutely perfectly. Laughs at everything. He seems positive about absolutely everything he does. He's very supportive and just such a nice guy. I think he's fantastic. I hope already he wins. There's a lot of other good people in there who I do also like. In fact, there's no one in there I dislike as it stands, which has not been the case for quite a few years now. So I'm looking forward to keeping an eye on that. I say Danny might keep the McFly record going. I hope so on current form, unless I see anything to change my mind as the programme goes on. I've been having a few dental problems recently. It's funny how that happens. I don't know if it's the same with you. You don't have any problems for years and then you get one slight issue and it kind of becomes a knock-on effect. So in the last month alone, I've had to have 3 fill-ins and a crown fitted. And there was quite a gap between them sorting out my crown, ordering it and actually fitting it. So I had to go round for a month with a massive, great temporary cap on my tooth, and then eventually I got the actual crown fitted, which is now fine. It looks great, although I did have a little bit of an issue originally. It wasn't quite sitting right, so I had to go back in and just say, I'm not sure this is quite the right fit. My dentist was great. She saw me, had a quick look at it, and basically just took a little bit off it, like it was a haircut. She just took a little bit extra off the sides, so maybe it looked and felt a bit better. And touch wood, since then it's been great, and I finally been able to return to eating steaks after not having them for 6 weeks. The latest international break has been and gone, with England winning both of their games. The second one quite comprehensively. I still am not really that bothered about this league competition they now play. It, I guess, does add some sort of competitiveness to the games, but I kind of preferred it, I think, when you just played random friendlies and nothing really mattered, although you always wanted to win. Great to see Harry Kane get yet another goal for his country. I miss seeing him week in, week out so much. As a Tottenham Hotspur fan, I have spent years in that stadium watching him play, and it's such a joy. He can do absolutely everything, and he just scores loads of goals, as he's proving in Germany with Bayern Munich. He's having another great season, and before we get to the next international break, his former Bayern manager will have taken up the England job. Therefore, I think we're going to see Kane in that England team for at least the next 2 years, hopefully longer. He is going to put quite some distance between himself and Wayne Rooney in that all-time England top goal scorer chart. While we're talking of football, briefly, Tottenham are still being Tottenham. We win the games we probably shouldn't, and when everything else has gone in our favour and a win would really shoot us up the league in a game that we really should win, then what tends to happen is we don't. It's been the same for years. You think I'd be used to it by now. I'm really not. It's so annoying. It's so frustrating. But we're not even at Christmas yet, so I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. 100% behind the team and the manager, and whatever will be, will be. One thing that doesn't change is a day out at the match, watching the game is still fun. Obviously, it's more fun when you win, but you can still have a good time. And the good thing about going to the game is you get to chat and get all your frustrations out with your mates at the game. So by the time you leave, you kind of feel a bit better, even if the game hasn't gone your way. That's almost it for this week. Just a quick reminder that you can hear my radio show Saturdays between 2 and 4 at radio9springs.com. Look after yourselves and each other. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.